All right, and we're live. Welcome back, everybody, to the PEO Speedwagon Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, as always. Extremely special episode today with John Allen of G&A Partners, the Chief Revenue Officer over there. The coincidence of G&A and Allen is certainly not one. Growing up in the industry a little bit, and super excited to have John on here, and of course with Ryan as well. Welcome, John.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, of course. I think as we do these and we have more guests on, we always like to just format it that it's just as much about learning about you and your background as it is about learning about G&A. And so always like to just start with where are you coming to us live from? I can see you're streaming to us here.
Yeah, I'm in the great state of Texas. So I live in Houston, in the west suburb of Katy, Katy, and yeah, the G&A headquarters is right here in Houston, and I think we have offices in about 20 plus cities, but Houston is our headquarters, and we've been here for the better part of 30 plus years. So yeah, I'm in hot, humid Texas.
Very nice. And you grew up in the area in Houston then?
I did. Matter of fact, I'm looking out my office window, and my high school is probably a mile away from this office. So I haven't left very far all these years.
Very nice. Very cool. Did you where'd you go to school at then?
Yeah, I went to a local high school here called Maid Creek High School, and then after that, I went off to college at Brigham Young University in Utah. Played some basketball there, studied finance, and then found myself at J.P. Morgan doing private banking and energy banking, and thought I was going to be a banker forever. And then in 2008, John W. Allen, my dad, who's the CEO of G&A, asked me to come work at G&A, and I wasn't entirely sure if I wanted to do that, work for my dad. Um, but here I am 16 years later, and loving every minute of it. So I've been at G&A for 16 years, and went from banking and finance to selling HR services. It's been great.
Oh yeah, yeah, and you get to use that finance degree as well in the PEO space now. It translates. What did your dad have you doing right out of the gate when you came into the business?
Yeah, when I joined, he was hesitant to um, treat me he didn't want to show any favoritism, right? So it almost felt like to overcompensate, he was pretty tough on me. And so he threw me to the wolves right out of the gate. I think my first job at G&A, they called me the special projects manager. And I think that was a nice way of saying I was questioning everything. How do we do this? Why do we do this? I was probably somewhat annoying, just asking lots of questions. And then from there, I transitioned into the operations role. I was operations manager. Then I was the VP of ops. And then I guess probably 10 years ago, our sales leader at the time, and our sales team was small. I think we probably had 8 to 10 folks. Today we have over 100, but about 10 years ago, that individual left the organization, and we're kind of sitting there going, well, who wants to run sales? What are we going to do? And I was like, I'll do it. And the rest is history. So I've been in the lead sales role for 10 plus years and wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah, and I mean, you guys have seen some pretty amazing growth. I think I just saw you guys just hit 100,000 in worksite employees. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was actually talking to John W. at the sales summit, and he told me we're at 102,000 on the dot. So
Wow.
102,000 worksite employees. I think that puts us maybe 8 or 9 in the industry as far as WSC size amongst PEOs.
Oh yeah, I mean, and it's even higher than that when it comes to how quickly you got to that. I look back and see sometimes like around when you took over, you guys were around like 20,000 maybe, or around 2016 worksite employees. So the growth you had, not only through that period of COVID, but just in such a short amount of time too, has been absolutely tremendous. I guess speak to that a little bit. What have you seen over that period in terms of changes to your strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I guess when I joined, we were probably, gosh, maybe we had 12 to 14,000 WSEs.
Yeah.
And I think my first year as the sales leader, our goal for the year as a sales team was to close $2 million in new business. This year, our goal is just under 24 million. And as you know, in the PEO industry, you do about 35% of that in the fourth quarter. So you're stressed out until December 31st, right? Um, but our growth has been pretty measured. We buy probably 2 to 3 PEOs a year, and then our sales engine organically generates 20% plus in growth on an annual basis. I think this year our goal is to close just under 20,000 WSEs from a new business perspective. Obviously, you're losing worksite employees as well because you can't retain them all, and so we're always trying to outpace what we lose. But yeah, as you get bigger and bigger, hitting that 20% number becomes more and more difficult. But that's always the goal. I think this year, honestly, our growth goal from a new sales standpoint is probably north of 25%. So it's definitely aggressive. But yeah, we feel confident we can hit it. We'll see. That's why we need folks like you guys at PEOMG.
Yeah.
Well, we're happy to contribute, and we just did one here the other day that got inked, and you had some involvement in that, and really appreciate that. That meant a lot to that business owner. G&A has 100,000 worksite employees, so it's very well known in the space. But as you know, John, like from a business owner to business owner perspective, their awareness of one PEO to the next varies greatly, and so I think you not only stepping in, with the A, but even more so just like the confidence and the positioning within your organization to share why you believe that was a right fit, running parallel to the PEOMG recommendation was really powerful for him. And I will say, like he was on board with PEO all along, but kind of resistant in some ways, and that was really a wonderful partnership with you. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate that too. He was actually a lot of fun to talk to, and what I found is after we kind of talked G&A and his decision, it turned more to he started asking lots of questions about acquisitions. It sounds like they're acquisitive and growing, and we just talked about transition and assimilation of new organizations, and you could tell he's a sharp individual. So I appreciate you teeing that up.
Yeah, absolutely. Super sharp guy. They're going to grow that organization through acquisition here at the tail end of the year, and they've got a couple more lined up, and really cool guy. I also learned he's got a son who's in the minor leagues and in the Cubs program, where you were up in Chicago just this week. So I've met him. Now his son's about 6'6", so he was describing he's a bit of a power hitter, but I know you're a tall guy too. So well, that's awesome. I mean, you're talking. You guys have these different. I call them in our organization spokes in the wheel in which you can generate growth. You've got the organic growth. You've grown your sales force significantly to do that. We work with you and some of the other members, and they do an excellent job. You've got the acquisition, and then you talked about it. Like you're going to have some client attrition, but your guys' NPS score and your client reviews are off the chart. So share a little bit about that, because a part of a growth strategy is also keeping the great clients you have. So how have you guys done that so well?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. We are laser focused on NPS, and that's something that we've been doing for the better part of 5+ years, where we survey our clients twice a month. We're probably going to move to once a month so that we don't annoy them. But we want to know how they're feeling. And it's interesting, in our organization, everyone knows when it's NPS day, because from John W. throughout the organization, we're getting the NPS results, and we're jumping on any negative feedback like a pack of wolves, right? We don't want our clients to be unhappy. And, so I think historically we've probably been right around 90 to 92% retention. I think as we get bigger and bigger, that certainly becomes more difficult.
Absolutely.
I know some of our national competitors are probably, in the low 80s. We want to stay away from that area. We want to stay in the low 90s, because some of the attrition you can't control, right? A business gets purchased, they go out of business, right. Whatever it may be. But we want to control the controllable, which is client service And so I think it's really just a mindset from the top to the bottom. It's all about NPS, responsiveness, making sure that when the clients call in, it's first call resolution, that we're not just passing the baton to 50 different people. And, if you harp on that long enough, it just kind of becomes part of your DNA. And I think that that's kind of where we're at. Look, we make mistakes, don't get me wrong. You'll probably experience over the years of all the clients that you send us that we're going to stub our toes. But I think what we do really well is just like jumping right into the mix and fixing things as quick as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got several with you guys, and there really have not been much in the way of slip, trips, or falls. But I think part of that too, and I found in your process, is that there's alongside of our approach, there's a really high level of expectation setting and creating a horizon of how these services are going to come into your organization, when you're going to use them, how they're going to impact, and then also where the slips, trips, and falls could occur. And so I think for, you're leading a large organization, like predictability gives people as much comfort as anything else. Like, hey, if I know that things can go a little sideways, but there's a solution, an approach, and a responsiveness to that, then I can make decisions around that. And I've felt that very much through the G&A processes we've gone through with our clients, that there's a keen focus on giving them that sight to how this relationship can, have its ebbs and flows.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, we one of the things that we do across the organization is we set wildly important goals at the corporate level, right? So I think this year we have 3 wildly important goals, and then those trickle down to the departments, those trickle down to the individual employees where they're setting individual KPIs, and then we measure those religiously. But they're all tied around growth, assimilation of acquisitions, and a retention of clients. Those are kind of the 3 pillars. And, to your point, we're constantly discussing those, fine-tuning those. And that's one of the reasons why we're super excited about our recent new kind of investment partner, TPG Capital. Unlike other private equity firms, not only do they invest in the business, but they also have an operations team of about 60 plus folks that specialize in different areas, everything from sales and operations to marketing to AI to customer service, et cetera. And so we just had our board meeting last week, and usually board meetings are all about EBITDA, right? Like, what are you guys doing to hit your goals? Interestingly, this board meeting was all about how can AI improve how you support your client base? What are you guys doing to improve in these areas? And early on in the partnership, we hired a consulting firm, and they came in and did kind of a broad overview of the entire organization. And they came back with a bunch of recommendations. And so in the board meeting, we went through those recommendations and kind of prioritize those. And the cool thing about it is they're all things that will help us become better and maintain that high NPS score, maintain that high client retention. And so it's been refreshing that our new partner isn't just about the bottom line, but they're about like the delivery of our services and making sure that we continue to be a world-class organization.
That's really awesome. I mean, we've seen that. I've worked with private equity and venture capital, not only being installed in kind of similar situations with some HR and HR tech companies to do just that work with the operational support or sales, operations, assessments. It can be a powerful tool. But then when they're aligned with you, they're saying, hey, we're putting this money in and we're going to partner with you to help grow the business versus become, like the bank just sitting on top of you going, where's my money? Right. So that partnership is so key. And, I've seen that as a very, I'm not surprised that that's the kind of the organization you guys align with, because there's just a lot of intentionality in the things I see G&A do across the board. And so who you'd align with and have invest in your organization's growth is not surprising.
Yeah, John,
appreciate that.
It sounds like they're going to be sending you Net Promoter Score surveys twice a month now, and seeing how you're checking in with you, seeing how you're doing all the time.
Yeah, exactly. I'll give him a promoter score for sure.
Yeah.
Just a little side note, what was kind of cool about the process. And so as many people may know, like our founders, Tony Grijalva and John Allen. John Allen is our CEO, still very involved in the business, equity holder in the business. Like this is his, he's very much invested in the growth of G&A. Tony wanted to retire. John's he's getting up in age as well. And so it was time for us to bring in additional capital, not only to allow our founders to take some chips off the table,
Sure.
but also to help fuel growth, right? Like, as you can imagine, adding 20, 30, 40 sales reps to a team is expensive.
Yes.
Buying or acquiring larger PEOs is expensive. Investing in the service organization is expensive. And so we wanted to have an active investment partner that could not only bring capital, but it could also bring know-how. But what I was going to tell you, which was kind of cool, is as we were going through the process, they were nowhere to be found initially. They were kind of a late entrant into the whole discussion. And what I found most interesting is that, and you guys probably know this, but private equity firms, they kind of go through this process where they identify an industry, they research the heck out of the industry and create kind of a thesis. And then if they like the industry, then they hone in on potential partners. And so unbeknownst to G&A, they created their thesis. They love the industry. They actually own another PEO called Entertainment Partners, which focuses on kind of the movie entertainment industry. So they had a good understanding of the industry, but they wanted to know more. So they hired the Boston Consulting Group, and we all know Boston Consulting Group they're not cheap, right?
No.
And so they do an exhaustive review of the industry and kind of check that box and say, we love the PEO industry.
Yeah.
And then the next step was, let's look at the PEOs that are out there that are available for investment. And they identified G&A and went a mile deep on their own to learn about G&A. And they came to the conclusion that G&A was a best-in-class PEO and a PEO that they should take a good hard look at. And so I don't share that to kind of, pound my own chest, but more so as a testament to the people at G&A, how we approach service, and the fact that it has not gone unnoticed.
Yeah.
So much so that it attracted capital from one of the top private equity firms in the country, which is cool. I mean, there's a lot of good PEOs out there, so we don't have a lock on the market.
Sure.
We have a lot of very good competitors, but we feel strongly that we're one of the best out there, and the investment from TPG certainly shows that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's super cool to hear. And I mean, it's validating. You should, beat your chest about it a little bit because it's a result of hard work and that intentionality that I was referencing. But it's also what it means when somebody does that kind of research into you, right? It's like, when you're a pro ball player and someone writes you a big contract, like, yeah, you might all have a lot of money already from being an all-star or an MVP, but it's about what that money says about what they think about you. And so to have that kind of validation from a group like that, not that you guys didn't know you were doing great work already, but it just kind of accelerates that belief, your ability to out and grow and hire salespeople and get more people into the G&A platform, which really does a wonderful job helping small to medium-sized business owners take care of their people and take care of their business, their baby, and there's not much more that's important than that. So that's really cool. So you guys were just doing the sales summit. You talked about this time of year, 35%. In some organizations, they wait even more, so it ends up being 40 or 50% of their annual number gets done. What do you talk to your sales force about this time of the year? Because this is kind of Rick's journey, opportunity to hear from an expert like yourself. Like, this is kind of his first formal fall selling season. Like, what are you telling your folks about what happens this time of year and what they should expect?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, the first thing that we kind of kick off the summit talking about is, and I had kind of put a slide together that showed kind of all these different cogs in the wheel. And the message is that we're only as good as the sum of the parts, right? Yeah. If we have 13 plus regions and close to 100 sales reps, Certainly there's going to be 10, 15, 20 sales reps that close an insane amount of business, right?
Yeah.
But even when you kind of add all that up, it's nowhere close to the $24 million number that we have to hit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the first thing that we focus on is we all have to do our part. And so we talk about that, and we kind of break it down by region, by individual, so that they can kind of see that, like, don't focus on this big number, focus on the piece that you can control. Mm-hmm. And then when you add it all up, it's like, oh, wow, we've done a lot together. So we focus on that first. The second thing that we focus on is consistency. I think, and you know this, mm-hmm. Ryan, is that selling PEO is hard, mm-hmm. right? There are so many factors that go into it, right? It's timing. Mm-hmm. Are you going to get the right medical rates? Mm-hmm. Did they have a bad experience with a prior PEO? Like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so we talk a lot about controlling what they can control, which is their effort. Yeah. You can't control, if you submit 10 groups, the likelihood that even north of 5 groups are going to come back with just game-changing medical rates that make the deal a no-brainer is a pretty low probability. So it's the day-to-day effort. It's the prospecting cadence. Mm-hmm. It's being able to deal with rejection. It's knowing that you're not going to win every deal. And so we really focus on mindset and activity levels. And one of the slides that always resonates with the sales team is I put together a slide that shows the average metrics on a weekly, monthly, year-to-date perspective for our top 10 sales reps. So that they can compare what have I done year-to-date compared to the top 10 who are closing a bunch of business. And what's uncanny at the end of the day is the key to success is generating opportunities in pipeline. Right. And so a number that we really focus on with our sales team is you need to generate 100 opportunities a year to ensure that you hit your numbers. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so that's probably more details than you wanted to know, but we focus a lot on kind of input. Yeah. And what do you have to put in so that you can, you know what you're going to get out of it. And it was interesting because we went around the room and we said, hey, if this is your first sales summit, raise your hand. Mm-hmm. And it was crazy how many new people were in there. Sure. And I think the message to the new folks is don't get frustrated at the 3-month mark, the 6-month mark, or sometimes even at the 9 or 12-month mark if you're not closing the amount of business that you want. There's a ramp up, and it takes time, but just keep grinding. And I always use the example of one of our sales reps in Dallas, he's a perennial top performer. Mm-hmm. And I always joke around, and this is factual, is that in his first year, he probably wanted to quit about 10 times. And I just kept telling him, just keep doing what you're doing. It's all going to work out. And that second year, just things took off and he's never looked back. And so that's the message to the new folks is just keep working hard, build pipeline, take your lumps. And in year 2, things are going to snowball and take off. And so, so we talk a lot about that. And then we try to bring in, at every sales summit, we try to bring in 2 components. Component number 1 is PEO specific training, right? Like you want your sales reps to know the nuts and bolts of workers' comp and SUTA and all the different levers. And then the second component is let's just teach them good, proven sales skills. Mm-hmm. And then let's have some fun, right? Because at the end of the day, we want them to be motivated. So we did a fun boat cruise in Chicago, ate good food, listened to good music. It was a great time, and hopefully it propels them into selling season.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, been exposed not only to PEOs I've been involved with, but in general, and in the calendar kind of marks the same, for everybody. There's some kickoff, there's some event, and some PEOs do it grander and different or smaller, and what it sounds like you guys did is really great because it's gonna be a push for the next 120 days, right? This is we were talking about this on a recent podcast where, the summer is kind of like this desert and the fall selling season is this oasis. And so there's just a lot of energy and there's a lot of magic and there's a lot of alignment to the end of the calendar year. But it comes with a lot of work. Like you've got to be prepared to work later and longer, and you've got to get more focused than perhaps you've ever been. And that's hard to shift gears from that summer where you kind of tell yourself these excuses like, hey, it's just the summer and business owners aren't focused and they're on vacations and they've kids are out of school, whatever it is. And then you got to flip this switch. And so kicking it off and kind of the air cooling and galvanizing that effort through an event like that is really wonderful, because what comes out of these things, if they're done right, is my experience, is a lot of good people doing hard work, trying to help small to medium-sized businesses, and you're giving them the tools and the attention and support to be able to do that.
Yeah, no, it's a great event. I always tell the sales team it's my second favorite event of the year. My first is President's Club.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I wish we could do it twice a year or once a quarter. But as you know, I mean, these sales summits are expensive.
Oh yeah,
it's tough to get the sales team off the streets for too long because pipeline can slow down. And so, I think next year we're probably going to do it in February as kind of a more beginning of the year kickoff versus a Q4 kind of motivational session.
Yeah.
Plus we can do kind of year-end rewards and awards and recognition. But yeah, it's always a great time, and I just love spending time with the sales reps, and you really get to know them and appreciate the grind that they have to go through on a daily basis. Because man, sales is hard, and every day it's like you got to get up and kind of amp yourself up for it.
Yeah, get ready to get your teeth kicked in, whether it's from the prospects or whether it's from underwriting or whether it's from safety. You've got a lot of, and I've talked to Rick and our team a lot about this, and you kind of touched on it. Taking the reps out of the field is challenging because time kills deals and you lose inertia with those deals. And I've always equated a PEO sales process is to like this 3D puzzle, where all pieces kind of have to get in place, and they've got to get in place in the right time before gravity pulls one of the pieces south. And, so trying to think about how do we do that and how do we balance that against the year and also pulling reps out of the field. It's challenging, right? Because you also want that time to get them motivated and amped up. So it sounds like you guys are doing it right for certain.
Yeah, we try. It was a little side story is I'm big on like G&A swag for all these events. And so I always try to choose things that I would wear. And so anyways, we did these rowback shirts, and
nice.
I said, look, guys, if it's not too cheesy, let's all wear our G&A swag on the last day of the summit.
Okay.
And it was just funny because walking around the hotel, we all look like we're wearing a school uniform. And then at Chicago O'Hare, flying out of Chicago, I keep running into G&A folks, and I'm like, I'm sure the people at this airport are wondering, why do I keep seeing these people all dressed in the same outfits?
Well, it's good marketing. Somebody's going to ask what you do when they've seen their 100th person wearing it. Either that or they think they're going to be under siege in some way, like there's some sort of invasion happening. Very cool.
No, it was fun. It was a good time.
Well, no, I've also noticed too, like for someone new to the industry, like just the friendliness in the industry and people willing to kind of cross the aisle to help other PEOs and, speak with myself in these podcasts or just speak with me on Zoom and learn about, small businesses and PEOs and how they've been successful at, whatever size organizations they go after has been really tremendous too. It's an industry where I've noticed people just are willing to talk about, how they're growing and, what they're doing in the PEO industry that's unique to theirs. And so I feel like it's been not between what it actually does for small business owners and then the friendliness of everybody in the industry. It's really struck me as a space that I wish I'd been in ever since I got out of school, honestly.
Yeah, it definitely gets in your blood. And, you make a good point, Rick, is at least from a G&A perspective, we try to always position ourselves as a friendly PEO. At the end of the day, we're all in the trenches together with all of our competitors. We're all trying to help small businesses. There's a ton of them out there. There's plenty for all of us to market and sell to. And I think to the extent that we help each other, it just further elevates the industry and pushes it forward. And it helps us kind of keep in our line of sight that at the end of the day, it's not about us. It's about the small and medium-sized businesses out there that are trying to grow, trying to hire people, trying to improve, the U.S. economy. And, it's a great industry and it gets in your blood. And I get super excited for NAPIO every year, which is in a couple weeks. I just love, visiting with all of my peers in the industry. It's just a great time. It's a great industry, and um, yeah, let's keep it that way, right?
Yeah, yeah, I'm excited to be in it and be a part of it, and I hope we stay connected as well, and you kind of get to see my growth through the industry too along the way.
Yeah, definitely.
So with that, do you guys know? You don't have to reveal. I'm just curious.
Sure.
Do you guys know where you're going for your President's Club yet? You got that all figured out?
Oh yeah. We're going to Ireland, and so
Oh, okay.
yeah, we created this logo for the sales summit. It was all gas, no brakes to Ireland, and
That's
coincidentally, we end up in Chicago that does the big,
right.
you know,
Yeah.
celebration every year on St. Patty's Day. And no, but we're super excited. We're actually going to be, so we'll be in Ireland in May, and we'll stop at 3 different spots, but we finish up at the Adair Manor, which I guess is an amazing castle somewhere in the Irish countryside. And so we'll get to play golf and do all the countryside stuff. And,
Yeah.
it's President's Club, and this, it's a game changer. And I know that oftentimes the operation folks, they sit there and they're like, why does sales get to do these trips? And how do we get on those trips? And look, I wish I could bring everyone at G&A on these trips. I really do, because they're amazing. But if you correlate when we introduce President's Club trips to kind of the growth at G&A, it's definitely in there because it's a motivator. What I always find interesting is when a rep goes one time, they never want to miss it again. Yeah. And not only do they not want to miss it, their spouse doesn't. And so their spouse they're bugging them on a daily basis. Hey, where is G&A taking you? Where are you tracking? What are you doing? What's your pipeline look like? And hey, if I can have husbands and wives pressuring their spouse to make President's Club, I'm all for it,
Totally. Yeah, you've got a spouse who is basically your sales manager at home for your G&A sales rep, and
exactly.
No, it's so real. And what I think is really cool. I mean, I started at a sales kickoff. That was my first day on the job was actually at a sales kickoff when I was at Administaff. It was Administaff before we got rebranded to Insperity. And I remember seeing, and Administaff did this thing, or Insperity did this thing for several years, where the trip was right after it. So basically, at the end of the day, you got on, like, half the people, or 20% of the people got on a bus and went to an airport and went on trips with their spouses and everything else, and the other half went home to their respective markets. And some of those markets, in February are pretty cold, like St. Louis, so it doesn't feel good. And even though I had no opportunity to make that, I just started. I said to myself, I'm like, I'm never not going to make it. And that was like an impression that was made upon me. And then when I got onto the trips, and what the greatest value was, great places, you're doing Ireland, that's going to be amazing, was the time with the people who were there, right? So the dialogues that happen, whether it's around the pool or around, having cocktails or just a beach or whatever, like, you're around talented people talking about the same thing and gaining perspective from them. And when you're new, even if you've made a trip, there's a whole host of things you have never, it's going to take years and years to learn in this industry because there's just too much to understand. So the exposure, along with, that positive ego kind of visualization of your success, is so cool. And I do, like, not that I can go tell PEOs to go do President's Club, because they are expensive without a doubt. And some, depending upon where they are in their life cycle, their business may not be able to afford it. But it does, because of the complexity of this offering, that time together and additional training with the upper 20% is so key.
Yeah, it's a definite game changer. And look, you could easily do a bonus for hitting certain goals, or you could take that money and put it into a memorable trip with your peers where you're learning from them, meeting their significant other, and just building that further, kind of enhancing and building the culture of the organization. And so, I'm a huge proponent of President's Club trips. And like I said, I wish I could bring everyone.
Of course.
But to your point, it's not cheap.
No. Not if you're making them memorable, that's for sure. And
Yeah.
I mean, I love that we're talking about that too, because that is an element of for the PEO sales forces at large, right? Not just your own, but others that listen to this and excited to learn things from, a sales, executive like yourself. That's what people start to, use as their motivator right now. I'm 120 days from putting, the cherry on this year, and I really got to focus, and I really got to hunker down and do the work, and those kind of events and the, accolades that come with it, for being able to do something exceptionally hard is, it's really what drives, I know for a fact, a lot of people through this time.
Yeah, I agree.
So Rick, you gonna get on a trip this year?
I think so. I've won Employee of the Month, the last 12 months, I think? So,
Yeah. Getting some competition now, but no. Yeah, you
No,
we'll
we're
have
trying to think through a few ideas where, like, for example, one of the things I think we're going to roll out in Q4 is an internal referral program where if you hit a certain benchmark, you're eligible uh, as an employee to qualify to go on. So the top referring employee at G&A could be eligible
yeah.
for the President's Club trip. And then it would be great to kind of set a goal with some of our top referral partners where, for example, if you guys are the top referring partner of G&A in 2025, you guys come to the trip with us and, get to brush shoulders with your G&A partners, and no pun intended there. But I think that we need to do something like that as well, because at the end of the day, we're kind of all in this together. And I think to the extent that we celebrate together, we're just that much more focused on the next opportunity. And so, yeah, we're always trying to think of new ideas. So keep them coming.
Yeah. No, love that. There you go, Rick. There's your pathway. There you go. You just coming soon in February 2026. You can get on the G&A. No, that's really cool. And yeah, I think there is. We've loved the partnership with you guys. We talked about one of our clients and amongst others in that partnership. And that really just starts with alignment. Like for us, when we sit down and learn about an organization and their needs, their priorities, the way they think about their people, their culture, just the way you guys come up in our mind and in our recommendation engine, if you will, a lot because of the approach. And that's very evident, not only that has come from the G and the A, but then you're taking over of the ship, especially on the sales side of the organization and its growth. And it's super meaningful work. You talked about small to medium-sized business owners, the backbone of the economy. They employ 71 million people, like all the data points. But at the end of the day, it's actually just taking care of somebody who's taken a risk and try to make life a little better for them and their employees. And you guys do a phenomenal job. And so we're very appreciative of that partnership. And then if a trip comes out of it, that's the cherry on top for us.
Icing on the cake. Yeah, no, we appreciate it. And, you had mentioned something early on about kind of our keys to success and growth. And I talked about sales and and retention and acquisitions. And I think one thing that I forgot to mention is our people. At the end of the day, from top to bottom, we just have amazing people. We have, we have a great executive team. We have great people on the technology implementation side. We have great people leading our payroll, HR, benefit, risk and safety departments. It's just, we have a lot of really good tenured folks that love being at G&A, that bleed G&A red, and really want to take good care of our employees, our WSEs, our clients. And I think that because of that, it helps us on the sales side be successful. And so without the ops team, we would have a tough time selling G&A. Without great partners like you guys, we'd have a tough time selling G&A. But it's definitely a group effort.
Yeah, they'd say, you'd rather have 1,000 people that love you than 10,000 that just like you. And it sounds like, you've got a group of people there that certainly love you. So
yeah,
that's awesome. Well, John, I want thanks for jumping in and doing this podcast. We certainly do appreciate it. It's always a great time to be able to do this and get the word out a little bit. Not only about what you guys are doing for your clients, but also what's going on in the world of G&A and the growth that you guys have to look forward to this next year. So thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And yeah, really appreciate the partnership. And let's continue to grow the PEO industry together. You guys are awesome.